Every journey has its twists, but the real magic lies in how we navigate the unexpected. Welcome to Resilience with Dhruti Shah, where we dive into the untold moments of perseverance, grit, and unstoppable spirit. In this podcast, we bring you candid, unfiltered conversations with leaders, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who have faced challenges, embraced uncertainty, and emerged stronger. These aren't just success stories, they're real lessons in resilience. Listen closely, and you might just have your own light bulb moment. Brought to you by C2C Organizational Development, where we put people before strategy, because that's where true transformation begins.
You cannot fake yourself at work. Sometimes people say you have the home version, you have to transit then into work version, but at the end of the day, you are a whole self. So
Yeah.
my narrative has always been, if you cannot speak up at home, how can you speak up at work?
Hey there, you're now listening to Resilience with Dhruti Shah, a podcast which brings you incredible stories of resilience, unfiltered, inspiring, and real. Stay tuned for today's guest.
What does it take to break barriers and drive real change for women? Jingjin Liu knows this firsthand. As a trailblazing entrepreneur, she is leading the charge for women's inclusion and social justice across Asia through the Elevate Group, building a movement that opens doors and reshapes leadership. Jingjin is on a mission to challenge norms, push boundaries, and create a world where women can thrive at every level. Without any further delay, let's dive into the conversation with Jingjin herself. Hey Jingjin, welcome to the Resilience with Dhruti Shah. It is such a pleasure to have you here.
Hi, Dhruti. Thank you for having me here.
Most welcome. Jingjin, your journey has been fascinating, from working with major tech firms to founding ZaZaZu, a company that champions sexual wellness for women. It is such a powerful and bold, mission and maybe a vision that you have, especially in cultures where this topic is still a taboo. I'd love to start by understanding what led you to choose this path of empowerment through sexual wellness. And more importantly, how? Because up until a certain point, you were into marketing and then you made the switch. And oh my God, what a switch that was. So, what led to this?
Yeah, that's a very long conversation. I'll keep it short. So ZaZaZu started. So ZaZaZu is the first sexual well-being hub in Asia that empower women to understand our sexual health and sexual pleasure. I think as women, the root why I started this platform came from a completely different angle. I grew up in China. I'm originally from China and went to Germany when I was 16. And I had a quite turbulent childhood back then. I am a dark-skinned dark-skinned Chinese child, and I'm very extroverted as well. And this back in the 80s, you can imagine, is not a good trait for a girl.
Yeah.
And my parents has always worked a lot. I was brought up by my grandparents, and I didn't have the backbone in the childhood. Nobody championed for me in a way, and I was very badly bullied because how I look and my personality, and I was not able to grow my confidence as a young girl. And only when I decided to move to Germany and live this environment, and I look still the same. I was still this extroverted, dark-skinned girl, but suddenly the culture embrace who I am. Suddenly, speaking up has become a good thing, and a dark skin has become pretty. And I personally did not change. And this was the first light bulb moment for me as a young adult that culture that you don't even need to change as a person. When in the moment where you move from A to B, your value and how you present yourself will change completely. So, and then this was the first realization as well, how many challenges by birth, because you are a woman, you have to go through.
Yeah.
And then I embarked a corporate career in the male-dominated domain, the automotive. And I have always been the only Asian, the only woman, the only senior director under 35. And I didn't find it necessarily difficult to be the only. And did not understand what women were struggling with, break the glass ceiling, their work were not to be seen, how to speak up confidently, until it was one day pointed out to me that I could succeed in this environment because I acted largely like a man. And it's not even acting, it's my personality trait
Yeah.
are more towards too young, I would say, than in. I was more dominant. I was more. I wanted to make decision fast. I was less collaborative. I mean, a lot of things that women. Not, I'm not stereotyping. That women would rather, present themselves. How women would present themselves versus
Yeah.
a man. I had more the male trait, so I recognize that a lot of things that we have been missing out if you don't focus on the hardship that women have go through, I have to
Yeah.
say. And I want to help women to build confidence from within, having seen so many women, under my team or that women I work with, just did not bring up the competence, the confidence in their competence about speaking up due to cultural norms and various other social factors. And then I want to help them through a very different angle, which is to own your body, to own your sexuality, to understand who you are first.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what a lot of people don't realize, Jingjin, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, is that we are not quiet by choice. We've been taught from a very young age to remain quiet. And what we
Yeah.
don't realize is that when we are talking about our bodies as kids, as children, and we said, hey, you know what? You're not supposed to talk about it in front of other people,
Yeah.
that impacts other aspects of life. What
Yes.
we forget is that it's not just that where I'm shutting down. I'm shutting down in a lot of places because suddenly I'm double guessing. Wait a minute, does that mean I'm not even supposed to talk about XYZ?
Yeah.
Or can I open my mouth about this? I'm very
Yes.
unsure. I'm not really sure how to talk about this anymore. And that's really where it all starts when
Mm.
we become uncomfortable talking about something so personal, like our
Yes.
own body. I mean,
Yes.
and the stereotyping that you talk about, I don't think we need to stereotype. I think the world has done it for us, right?
Correct. Yeah.
And we just kind of pick up the pieces and move in
Correct.
from there and say, okay, what now? What next, right? So that's
Yes.
very interesting. You did touch upon a very interesting thing over here again. You faced a lot of challenges. Um, what comes to mind when you hear today, because you've come a long way from where you started, and I'm sure there are
Yeah.
miles to go. But when you think about the challenges as you were starting off, going from corporate to becoming an entrepreneur, going from someone who always had an agenda to, how entrepreneurship is. It's like a blank slate and you can go the direction you want to. How did you go about overcoming those challenges? What were those?
Oh, then I mean there are many. I think, and then I think I was quite fortunate because entrepreneurship came to me. I did not choose to be an entrepreneur. I
Mhm.
started my first business while I was still in the corporate, and I started the first company called Aspo Drives. To help Chinese farmer in the rural area to gain made in Germany quality,
Yeah.
kind of gearbox and engines, and um, this is firstly, this is the industry that I was already in commercial vehicles, so I know the industry well. And
Mhm.
secondly, this was in the corporate life in Germany was I was compared to Singapore or Asia is it's slower paced. And I started this company when I was 26. So
Wow.
I had a corporate career, I had a corporate salary, and that was still I mean mid manager level. So your day is not filled with you are not completely occupied. You still have
Mm,
enough bandwidth. And then this opportunity came to me as when I was in an industrial fair. Someone approached me and saying, I had this opportunity in China, and I see there's a demand. Well, and then I see that you are selling some machines here, and this guy is just a farmer. He barely understands what we do as a corporation selling B2B, and then he was thinking about B2C, and he just
Interesting.
wanted to help the farmer in his region.
Yeah.
And there was low risk, as in we took a 60,000 euro bank loan. There was three partners, and yeah, we just did the first trial. So it was less about, if you talk about entrepreneurship today, I feel sometimes people are over exaggerating, make it a big deal out of it, because also a lot of funding is inside these institutional funding, or entrepreneurship has become the founder. These are all big terms. We started just as, let's buy a machine at cost, and then let's mark it up our cost, our, premium, and then sell it so that the farmer can afford. We saw a market niche because these machines were machines that cannot run in Germany on the road anymore. They were due to regulation after a certain cycle, like a million cycle, but they were still more than good enough for a market like China. And we saw the opportunity, and then we just did it. And then eventually, over 10 years, the company has grown to a certain size. And so I paced it until 7 years down the line. The company has become so big that the three of us, one of us, need to step down from
Right.
our full-time job. And because I was the middle woman between Germany and China, and then so I took the company to Singapore. But just think about it. This is entrepreneurship for me is actually like the hawker center here in Singapore, like this, or the small kiosk, or the small, auntie running a small DIY store. This entrepreneurship is not necessarily about the big thing, the grand thing. It's about adjusting your life, to doing something that fulfills you and bring value to others, and on your own terms.
Amazing. That's actually a fascinating definition, and I don't think I've heard many people use this term in as many words, right? So if you think about entrepreneurship, according to you, it's about, it may not be a grand idea that you're taking
Yeah.
out to the world, which is what it has become today. Everything has to
Yes.
be grand, bold, loud, out there.
Yeah.
Very investor rhetoric as well. But from what it sounds like, and you just decided to take an opportunity,
Yeah.
and just see it grow very organically, right? There was
Yeah.
no clear 5-year plan or 10-year plan that you'd put on.
Not at all.
Not at all. Just a very clear purpose. I want to make a difference. Here's how I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And the idea makes sense, financially feasible. Let's do it. And literally that was it, right? So
Yeah.
very, very interesting. When you had to leave your work, it's like a security nest that you have to leave, and you moved into the world of unknown. What was that like for you?
I think there are many dimensions. I would say was fortunate enough. I didn't move to an unknown because the business was established. We know that how we wanted to grow, but we are not in the mercy of growing. And it's just a business. We want to expand. We want to make make the impact bigger. I think for me, the hardest part of the transition is actually to lose the corporate identity. Because
Yeah.
I have associated I remember it very well when I was about to quit. I still have the two business cards. One is the global marketing director, and then the manager director of Aspo Drives.
Yeah.
And then we were making 5 million revenue back then. But when I give the card in the industry fair to someone, and they're like, okay, they did not appreciate, or they think you are a nobody. Now I'm quoting. Whereas in the moment where you carry a corporate title, regardless
Yeah.
how big or how small, people can allocate you and identify you. And then sometimes the opportunity actually go to that, follow the bigger titles, which I think that's the biggest challenge in entrepreneurship, because then you are unknown regardless, unless you become the IPO. You get IPO later, but you actually don't. you are simply not well known. So you have to advocate for what you stand for the business
Mm,
every single day. Whereas when you are in corporate, your identity is already backed. Whether you
yeah.
work for Siemens, for big companies, you are leveraging on their brand. Whereas as entrepreneur, you have to champion for your brand every single day.
Absolutely. So I think just being persistent about it and being very vocal in terms of what is it that you want to create for yourself as
Yeah,
an identity, and not, I think, not fearing the labels that you receive along the way. I think that's one of the ways that you can think about facing that huge identity crisis that you may
yeah,
be, that you may be facing at that point. Fantastic. So, we started talking about ZaZaZu a little bit, right, at the
yes,
start. Uh, when you think about ZaZaZu and what you've created there, you said the mission of ZaZaZu is essentially to feel empowered about your sexual health, about sexual pleasure, just talking about it, being comfortable having those conversations. That's one part of it. But we started talking at the start about how that can have an impact on other areas of life. So,
yeah,
have you heard of certain stories where you've seen that happen, where women along the way have built their inner resilience, which is translated into something for them as leaders, or as
yeah,
entrepreneurs, or literally any walk of life?
yeah. A huge one. So I just did a TED talk on this topic, which is
Okay.
called Confidence in the Bedroom Leads to Confidence in the Boardroom. The
Mm-hmm.
reason I believe who we are at home, you cannot fake yourself at work. Sometimes people say you have the home version, you have to transit then into work version, but at the end of the day, you are a whole self. So
Yeah.
if you, my narrative has always been, if you cannot speak up at home, how can you speak up at work?
Mm-hmm.
And then to make it more provocative, if you cannot ask the closest man in your life, which is your husband, your partner, or whoever, your boyfriend you live with, in the bedroom for, let's say, pleasure, or for what this is what I want to want. This is how I want our sex life to be. This is
Yeah.
how I want to be loved. This is how I want to be touched. I like when you do ABC. If you cannot confidently advocate for yourself and assert your needs with the
Yeah.
closest man in your life, how can you transit this? Now you go to work. Let's say your peer is a man, your boss is a man, which usually often still is the case. Now you have to say to advocate. You want to have a more salary. You want to have you want to lead a project. How do you make the ask at work? And then there's a very strong, every time when I say this, people cringe a bit. They say, okay, where is this coming? Where is this coming
Yeah.
from? But if you think about it, because confidence is a muscle, then you have to exercise it in the most safe environment. And that's hopefully your home and the safest environment. And that the muscle will build over time and it will transit into your work narrative as well. So we have worked with various women, many women, I mean, when they, in the moment where they discover what they like in the bedroom. And again, Asian culture has forbid us to explore anything. Our body and sex is dirty
Yeah.
sex is actually for the sheer purpose of reproductive health. And it's for procreation. So there is no pleasure part. So majority of the women we work with have no idea what please them, what bring them joy in the bedroom. So
Mm-hmm.
we back then we had a product, we had counselors with various different ways. We have the workshops, and then once they discover their body, what they like, and discover pleasure and discover sensations, and it will we deliberately make that link as well, is that you discover a different version of yourself, what your body is capable of
Mm-hmm.
and capable to experience. The understanding there will translate the understanding at work.
Yeah.
Um, and then when you touch on the leadership perspective, we had a lady who has been the lady I mentioned in my tech talk as well, who has been holding back her pleasure for the past 20 years with her husband, and then when the kids left their home, when they become adults, and she wanted to tackle this area. And then they opened up the conversation. She voiced out something he has been doing and she didn't like. And then and then this took her 20 years just to say it out loud, because then you miss the point. You miss the point okay, I don't like this because then you have dragged it for too long. And then
Yeah.
this for her, I don't like when you do this. This is just simple sentence. And then luckily, I mean, the husband was very collaborative and he was surprised that something that he's doing did not please her, but he had no idea. And he said,
Yeah.
why did you just tell me now, 20 days
Yeah.
later? That has been such an empowered moment for her. And she started to assert her needs at work because she recognized once I asked, there's no pushback and there's change because he actually changed. And something that's just, I mean, it sounds so easy, but I mean, we have worked with her for over a year to understand herself first and then to translate what she wants to experience into words and then to say to the closest man in her life. And this was like, for her, she described it like a light, not only a light bulb moment, like a thunder moment. And
Oh,
then
yeah.
suddenly, things just start to change because your narrative start to shift and your resilience and your confidence, all of these, because you had this big success moment at home, then
Yeah.
that breakthrough you will carry over to work as well.
Absolutely. And such a powerful message over here because when we use the word authenticity so loosely,
Yeah,
right, these days, that what you just shared right now is you truly being genuine, you being authentic, you being true to yourself, to your needs. And I think, one of the things I heard of when I was pregnant and I would go for yoga classes, right?
mm,
And my instructor she was this amazing person, and she'd always tell us, all the soon-to-be moms, that
mm,
you know, a lot of people will tell you that you need to put your child's need ahead of you, but I'm going to tell
mm,
you, put yourself first, because
yeah,
when you are able to successfully satisfy your requirements, your needs, and your wants, is when you're able to truly spread that joy amongst others. If you are
yeah,
unhappy, you're going to just spread that knowingly or unknowingly. So I think it's so important that even when we are talking about a topic like sex, which is so powerful, such an integral part of our lives. And if we are not able to talk about that uh, freely, then what's the whole
yeah,
point? And this is a conversation a lot of us have behind the doors with our closest
yes,
friends, but we're
yeah,
never really comfortable talking about to what you said, to the men in our lives. And what gives, right? I think it's just about speaking up and leaving the rest, because once you've said something, I think whatever reaction you get is not under your control. What is
yeah.
under your control is to really talk about yourself and then hope that the other person has the maturity to kind of deal with it and tackle with, because otherwise, you're not in the right place, is the way I look at it, right?
And it's also who you surround yourself with, right? How do you want to have this conversation? Who do you want this conversation with?
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to meet them somewhere. You meet
Yeah.
whatever message that's come from you, how that person is going to interpret or resonate with is what that person probably is going through. I read
Yeah.
this very powerful. I don't remember who said that. I was listening to one of the podcasts, and the person saying, "You are whatever you say. The response of that person is not necessarily that person. It's what something he or she is going through."
Yeah.
So if it's never that person's reaction. So the only thing you can control is who are you surround yourself with and what how firm or what do you stand for?
Yeah. And I think even as you move on in life, like you've done that multiple times, in different ways and forms, from either from corporate to entrepreneurship, or from China to Germany to Singapore, or from becoming a mom, from, and all of the various roles that you've embraced for yourself. I think it's important you reevaluate who you surround yourself with as you keep growing as well, because
Yeah.
and this is something that I even talk about when I talk about resilience, that just
Mm.
like you said about confidence, even resilience, I think, is a muscle that we can build over a period of
Yes.
time with certain skill sets, right? And
Yes.
your surrounding, right, from your physical space to your emotional space to your, the people that are around you, I think determines a lot of how you respond and react to situations as well. I think it plays a
Yeah.
huge role in building our resilience. Fantastic. So, as you as you look ahead, and let's just assume we have a crystal ball in front of us. Um, what do you see the next big milestone for ZaZaZu? What's your vision?
So for ZaZaZu, I think for ZaZaZu, right? I think it's for me, I always had the vision that one day my work is done, where every girl and every woman can confidently express what they know about their body and about their needs. I deliberately say girls is because that's something we don't encourage girls to touch their bodies.
Yeah.
Where else? But then let's say a young boy, a 14-year-old boy, why would he have a different need than a 14-year-old girl? If you
Yeah.
think about it, a 14-year boy touched himself the first time, we will, as a society, will say, oh, that's natural. If a 14-year-old girl, now imagine saying, okay, I'm touching myself. Even me as a mom, I myself would be a cringe. Okay, what do you mean by that? What have you experienced? Do you and then because of the unknown, because of the social condition we are growing up with, then you have to say, okay, if you touch yourself, did you break your hymen, for example? There are so many layers. If you think about how we treat girls, is that it's always with fear, with taboo, with cannot. And how we treat boys is, oh my God, now he has become boy, and then
Oh,
anatomically it is out there. So he has to touch it. Whereas women, it's just anatomically we are inwards, we are growing inwards. So it's always combined with shame and risk and cannot. So I want to wake up one day where my girl can confidently, deliberately tell, her body part and understand what she likes and dislikes, and then be able to confidently say yes and no, and then it's the same valid for boys. I mean, that's a grand vision, and it's we're nowhere close to that. But I think for next 10 years in the sexual well-being space, the next generation has become more vocal, and then the information they can access to today
yeah.
is just very different than our generation, and they can deliberately choose to not to be somebody's wife, or not to be, not to have intercourse when just to please a boy. And I think the narrative has changed a lot. So I
Oh,
think the
yeah.
social change for this is
Yeah.
it's the bigger vision.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have come a long way in certain parts of society, but it definitely needs to reach at a more grassroots level. And
Yeah.
as we start getting comfortable with these conversations, is when I truly believe that. I'll give you an example, right? My helper, when she talks about, repeatedly getting pregnant and not wanting
Mm.
a child, and
Yeah.
that can have such a huge impact every time you decide not to have it, right? And it
Yeah.
gets such a huge impact on your body. But she cannot say no to her husband. So at some point
Mm.
in time, I needed to have that conversation with her. And I told her, I'm like, if he doesn't listen to you, ask him to talk to me, because I'll explain as many words if I need to. And, it's been a few months now and she's been happy about it
Mm.
and I really think these are conversations that we need to start having with the women in our lives, the girls in
Yeah.
our lives, our own children, all of them, right? Just so that we become a little bit more comfortable. And I think it's not a battle that is won overnight. I think it's a
Yeah.
big one. It's a bigger battle to fight, which is going to last for a long time.
And it requires also understanding from men. I mean, we always, in any form of female empowerment,
Yeah.
often what I see missing is actually the male perspective. At the end of the day, if you have a empathetic partner, if you know that if you raise a boy that is emotionally available and
Yes,
then understanding, and a lot of problems will resolve themselves, no, for women.
exactly. Oh, that is so true. And that's where, if we get comfortable, we are able to have this conversation with our children. So I think it
Yes.
starts with us again, no pressure, but yeah, it does. um, Jingjin, if you could go back and think about yourself as, maybe growing up in China, right? If you
Mm.
could go back in time and give that one piece of advice to your younger self when you were just getting started in life in general, what would it be?
so many of them. I think the biggest one still I'm even struggling today. It's the long game. I think it's, whatever you do, whether it's entrepreneurship or corporate job,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's very easy in today's noisy world. You can become very short-sighted. And whatever you want to achieve, it will be a long game. And only through the long game, you have to see where you see yourself, whether it be corporate executive or entrepreneurship, um, any format, or as a mother, as a human being. What is the long game you play? What does your personal value play into a role? And the up and downs, the short wins or the short losses does not determine um,
Yeah.
the trajectory of a long way. Very often we get hit, especially when I was young, and things were never fast enough, and then if there is a setback, and I'll be devastated for a long time. I will question everything rather than, okay, this was just a setback, and then you move on. And then if you look at this small setback in the grand scheme of 20 years or even 30, 40 years of a career, it's really nothing. But if you just, back then, I was only able to see maybe until end of the year or end of the project. So I was very short-sighted when I was young. And I think from today, of course, it requires maturity. My younger 20 years self will not listen to what I'm saying now. That is for
Of
sure.
course.
That's why I think it's a lot of things require time. Certain wisdom will grow with you when you get older as well.
Oh, absolutely. And when you've definitely had a lot of varied experiences growing up as well. How do you remain so resilient, so tough-minded? How do you go about doing that? Like, if for our listeners, if there is, maybe three things that you can share that
Yeah.
that keep you the way you are, so amazing. What are some of the things that you do?
Oh, thank you. I mean, I'm all about the raw truth. Huh? It doesn't. I mean, you have to. I think resilience. This is my very personal view. No,
Mm-hmm.
resilience can only build through hardship. You have to experience burnout. I don't think you cannot not experience certain hardship and then build resilience. You have to, if you want to um, do yoga, master certain poses, you have to overstretch to know your limit.
Yeah.
If you want to know how resilient, how to build the muscle, you have to experience the pain after the burning in the muscle, right? Otherwise, you will never overcome the next level. So I think and I think a effective way, what I have found later in my entrepreneurship journey, is that you have to always go back to the why. Is that why am I doing what I do? It sounds very, the younger self to me, I would say, oh, that's blah. Well, what's your why? Because the majority don't know what's their why. For
Yeah.
me, impacting women to build something that impact 5 million women in Asia, and this is the company that I'm building with Uma, it's called Elevate. We will always go back to, does it align with our mission? Does it align with our vision? And then during bad days, sometimes things just don't turn out. Majority of times, things don't turn out as we imagine, although we are seasoned founders. And we'll always go back to what is our why?
Yeah.
And then does this small setback or bigger setback or this unexpected thing impact that? Or do we have to pivot? Are we on the wrong path? Or do we have to align our vision, mission? Because we
Yeah.
had a very strong why, will never derail to a certain way. And I think the second biggest thing is I heard this actually from Jay Shetty, who ran this podcast called On Purpose. And he said, on an uncertain time, this was during COVID, people always look for certainty, which you will
Yeah.
never find. You have to go back to purpose, to beg or hand helping others. How can you, just to remove yourself from me, and what I think is the current societal problem, everyone's so self-centered,
Yeah.
and then we help no one. And in the grand scheme of life, and then whenever you have setbacks, the more you think about yourself, the less you can get out of your head.
Yeah.
And I think as entrepreneurs, the moment where you get out of your head and see the grand scheme of things and go back to your why and what purpose drive you, it will give you a very clear. It's fairly easy to overcome, and it's not a bad life. It's a bad day. It will become very fast, this narrative then.
Absolutely. Thank you. That was very insightful. And I feel like we're just getting started on the conversation as well. But it's been an absolute pleasure, Jingjin. Thank you so very much for sharing all that you did. I'm very sure the listeners are going to go away with a lot of fantastic takeaways. Thank you for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Dhruti, for having me. It was a great conversation.
Thank you. Wow. Again, this was one conversation which literally gave me goosebumps because I could relate to it at so many different levels. Remina, what did you think about this?
Wow, Dhruti, that was such an, just listening to Jingjin's journey is especially inspiring. And, even more so when you think about, coming from China, where discussions around women's sexuality are still considered taboo in many places, right? So, and what she's managed to do is create a platform that encourages open conversations and self-awareness around these issues, which is so relevant today. I think it takes immense courage to challenge societal norms and push for a space where women can voice themselves, express themselves, and embrace their needs without hesitation or shame. So brilliant, Dhruti, just brilliant listening to her.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that she agreed to come on this podcast as a guest. And I feel truly blessed because honestly, how many times do we have this opportunity to have this conversation? It's always there at the back of the mind, but it is so difficult to talk about it. So for me, this entire conversation really reinforced the importance of knowing what we want, also expressing it without any fear and, standing up for ourselves. My favorite thing, what she said was that a woman who is comfortable being herself in front of, the truly important people in her life at a personal level is able to stand taller in the boardroom as well. So I think that just hit me, because we tend to be different versions of ourselves in different places, but you're one whole human. And I always say that. But as a woman, sometimes I do hold myself back and, watch out, you people, maybe I'll not anymore. So, again, listeners, I hope you've had as much fun as I did listening to the conversation, listening to Jingjin, and having some brilliant takeaways. If nothing else, here's what I would leave you with. Speak up. What's the worst that will happen? Just speak up. And we'll be back again next time. Until then, take care. This is Dhruti Shah signing off. Bye-bye.